12th Man podcast. It's been a while. We've been hibernating for the past couple of months, but we're back and banging. And I've got Ray here, who was a previous guest, but got him back on. He's buzzing in Twitter at the moment. His followers just skyrocketing. He's tweeting some absolute gems, and thought it's a good idea to bring him back and talk about a particular topic which is quite hot at the moment in football Twitter, which is in regards to youth players and how certain parts of our fan base, kind of looks down on them or thinks it's a sin to follow some of these talented players and backing them. And so, yeah, wanted to touch on this particular topic with Ray and look at both the pros and the cons and analyze this situation. And hope you guys, the ones that are listening, have a pleasant sort of discussion to listen to. So, first of all, Ray, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Appreciate the intro. I'm glad to be discussing Chelsea topics once again with you on a podcast.
Brilliant, man, brilliant. I'm buzzing actually. As I said, it's been a while, so just hang in there if I do struggle every now and then.
No problem, dog.
Cool. All right. So Ray, as you would have noticed in football Twitter in recent times, and you know that we've got a transfer ban, and no better time than now to use some of these youth players. Yet certain parts of our fan base, seem to be a little bit pessimistic about our youth products, and also, look down on anyone that seems to sort of back some of these youth players. Now, what I want to start off with you is one, what are some of the benefits, I suppose? One of the things I want to talk about is bringing in a youth player, the kind of attitude that you get out of a youth player in the club. I've noticed that it definitely does, sort of surpass any of the some of the international purchases. So talk me about some of the benefits first, and specifically in regards to attitude of youth players.
I think when you look at our academy, over the years, you can hear the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Salah, Lukaku, Nathan Ake, all these youngsters that were not really given a chance to really shine with the first team. But you look at the roster back in the day, we had players, very strong players that really could do what they could do, and with the managers, I don't think they could have afforded giving these players a chance, even though some I think did. But right now, with our youth academy, all these young bright stars and the hype around them that they're getting on Twitter, especially, I think supporting them does come with good pros and negative as well. But when I look at the Twitter timeline and all this abuse, in a sense, thinking they're not ready, or oh, they're getting so overhyped. But ignore that for the fact, even if you think they're not ready, supporting the youth can help. Twitter timeline can help Chelsea fans in general. You look at Chelsea fans in general, they're always complaining. There's this stigma that there's we're spoiled. They're always complaining if one things go down. So supporting the youth, especially now that everything's now social media wise, everything's digital. So just bringing that positive support to the youth, to the academy, will not only bring positive notes to Chelsea fans, to Chelsea in general. I think just making sure you have the support. Because even if you don't think they're ready, just telling them, hey, prove us wrong. We know you're a Chelsea Academy youth player. So like, still show that support, knowing that you're backed them, thinking, okay, show us wrong, show what you got, show to us that you belong in the first team, earn it like Ruben Loftus-Cheek did this past season by outplaying Kovacic, by outplaying Barkley, by outplaying the likes of Barkley and Kovacic, and earning that left center midfield that Ruben Loftus-Cheek eventually did over time, even through niggles of injuries and not getting enough playing time. So I think supporting the youth in general right now, it's not something that's a so-called crime, sin. So I think you need to get past that and just look at the way that even if you don't, fully think that they can play, don't abuse them. That's just wrong. It's childish. Supporting youth, I think right now, I think it's essential, especially this year with the ban. So yeah, I think there's a lot of pros that come with supporting the youth, even if you don't so-called have the highest views on them.
Yeah, 100% agree. You've mentioned about Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and and when we talk about youth, we're essentially talking about the talented youth. We're not talking about every single youth player, that's entering our academy and coming out of it. We're talking about the talented ones, and as I said, you've mentioned about Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and I feel like in terms of attitude, he's gutsed it out all this time. He's put in the hard yards. He's never sort of complained. He's been sent for loans. He's tried to do his best. It's come back. He's worked hard, and now potentially, once he hopefully comes back fit from his injury, this guy could be one of the most devastating midfielders in the Premier League history. So, that's what I feel a youth player brings more than a particular international-based player brings. It's that attitude, because they feel so close to the club. They can't seem to imagine anything else besides the club that sort of made them who they are. So yeah, like, I don't understand when certain people in football Twitter they always seem to put down. We've seen recently, Mason Mount been put down. Right. Now there's a bit of hype on Billy Gilmore, all because the guy he's showed a lot of class in the first two preseason games, albeit it's easy oppositions, but you can see the lad when he's touching the ball, and the way he's moving, the way he's controlling the midfield. He looks the part. Yes, he's not the finished product at all, but why wouldn't you give someone of that nature the opportunity? So, yeah, what's your thoughts on our first two preseason games so far, and seeing the likes of Billy Gilmore and Mason Mount, and some of the other youngsters as well?
I think, based on, like, even though it's just two games, but I think you can clearly see some players that truly really need to be out on loan and just still need to work on their game in general, but I think with these two preseason games, there's still a lot of time to show what you got. Obviously, 1 or 2 games may not define who you are, but like, you can still clearly see, even though they were giving full 45 minutes to show what they got, and given the level of opposition they were playing against, you can see some youngsters shining, some players still struggling, and some players, just playing average at best. So I think, the likes of Mason Mount, I think I was impressed with him in the second game. And I think, in his final third decisions, especially his accurate set pieces, which I think we currently really lack in our first team, even with Willian just taking them. I think he showed really good set pieces. I know he has a good free kick based off what I'm seeing, from what I heard and what I'm seeing from him in Derby County. The likes of Billy Gilmore, I think, I saw a lot of hype on Twitter, the Billy Goatmore, all these new hashtags. But I think Billy Gilmore, just seeing the likes of him on the pitch, and because we didn't really see much of him over the last couple of years. He's been brought up, but in terms of like Colin Hudson-Odoi or Ruben Loftus-Cheek or Ampadu, we really haven't much heard a lot from him. So like seeing him on the pitch, it's exciting. Seeing all these youngsters, it's exciting in these couple of games. But when you look at this season, I do expect them to step up and show what they really got and just bring their A game in this preseason, because they have to, in order to impress, in order to like just guarantee an opportunity to get into that first team. I think they need to impress. And with the first game, even though it was a draw, it was a game of two halves. The first game, in the first half, I think we could have scored a couple more goals. Batshuayi scored the first goal. It was a good pass from Kovacic. The second half was just a tryout of, just a whole different team even though I think, we should have won that game, but in terms of, it was just a game of two halves, completely different teams, different formations. We clearly saw players that are just not ready yet. Even they were given another run in the second game. So the likes of Casey Palmer, the likes of our longtime Chelsea graduate, or not graduated, but just in general player Lucas Piazon, who was given a run. The likes of Guehi was playing in the first game. Ugbo was given a chance as striker the second half of the first game. I think he was one of the players that left to the training camp, if I'm not mistaken, back to
That's
Copper.
correct. Yeah,
right.
That's correct. Yeah.
So Dujon Sterling, I'm not sure if he was one of the players that came back as well.
I'm not sure about if Sterling came back, but he might have, because I don't think I've seen him in the 24-man squad for Japan, so he's probably back as well.
So like the likes of him, and now with the news that Ethan Ampadu, I think he played in the first game, but not in the second game, right?
That's right.
So like the likes of Ethan Ampadu, all these players that I think deserve playing time to get stronger and just develop in general. They need to find these clubs and just playing time in general to take that next step to cement. For Ethan Ampadu, he needs to cement a position, just get playing time in general, just to get it behind him and just develop in general. And all these players, I think, based on the two games, I think we can just give a good analysis on them. Not a strong one, even though it's two games, but over the last couple, we're cutting down our squad slowly. I think correctly as well. And then by end of the preseason, I think we can have a good look at which players I think really do, not deserve, but should stick around and earn their first team position, and see what goes from there.
Correct. Agreed, man. Agreed. Now, off the back of that, now I want to touch on the next part. So we've touched on the attitude. I want to touch on how having youth players, potentially saves money. Now, in the likes of, in recent times, we've purchased Bakayoko and Drinkwater and a few other players as well, but those two definitely stick out. And they obviously, take major parts in our midfield, positions. I suppose they've occupy some positions there, and most fans clearly see that they're not good enough, and most likely they're not going to be part of the squad in the upcoming new season. So, in terms of saving money, if the right talent is there from the youth players, that's another positive, right? If we can bring in the likes of Mason Mount, hopefully Ethan Ampadu, when he goes on loan, does well, can come back and perhaps be part of a CDM position. Billy Gilmore looks like he's another midfielder as well, so hopefully he goes out and keeps performing well, whether he goes on loan or whether he continues in the youth team. But in the long run, we don't have to buy for the sake of just buying and perhaps making a mistake. And hopefully with the with the signing of Peter Cech in sporting director role, this doesn't happen anymore. But that's another positive, wouldn't you say, that youth player allows you to save money from purchasing, I suppose, average players?
I agree. You know, you look at Conte's season, his second season, you know, where we bought average players. I'm sorry to be harsh, but we did. You know, at the time, you know, he looked at the likes of Bakayoko, Morata, Drinkwater, Sampacosta, all these signings that we're giving, and you look at it on paper, maybe two of them, you know, we expected something else. In the likes of Morata and Bakayoko, we expected something else. But end of the day, from now, what we've seen from them, you know, they were average at best. And you look at our youth, and you know, choosing them over buying players, especially now with the transfer ban, we can't actually buy anybody or register their names and integrate them this season. I think it's a really very good opportunity for youngsters right now to step up, show us what they got, and in a sense, you know, we save money. You know, even if we do spend on in January is a good example. We were hearing rumors we could have bought Leandro Paredes, and now he's at PSG, and he really hasn't much shown what he was expected to show when he was in the available in the transfer market. And now you look at the likes of Billy Gilmore, even though Inter Ampadu was going on loan, the likes of him. Now we have Mason Mount. You know, you look at all these players, I think, in a sense, they bring a little bit more stability, and we know what they can bring to the table with the likes of signing someone else. And I think this is what people get carried away from, you know, just the attraction of buying players, I think is a huge, you know, people get caught up with that. You know, they think buying players is the best thing to do to improve as a squad, but I think it can go both ways. It's not as black and white as just buying players and you upgrade automatically. You clearly saw what, you know, just buying average players doesn't really help. It just adds unnecessary depth. And yeah, you know, you look at our midfield. Once Ruben Loftus-Cheek come back from injury, you have Mason Mount, Barkley, Kovacic, Jorginho, and Conte. I think that's perfectly good enough for midfield. You know, until Ruben Loftus-Cheek gets back, maybe we could see Drinkwater stay. But I think, and for the long run and for future-wise, I think we do need to cash in if given the opportunity on the likes of Drinkwater and Bakayoko. We saw Bakayoko struggle a little bit, even though it was, you know, the level of opposition of who it was, an Irish club. No offense, but like, you know, it is that type of level of opposition that you need to show out and show us what you got. And you can put arguments that, you know, that Bakayoko can still bring something to the table, a strong tackle, his huge presence in midfield is sometimes that we lack. You know, especially with Ruben Loftus-Cheek injured, he's a strong guy. But, you know, you look at the Premier League, it's more than just being strong and fast. It's about having good technique on the ball. And with having that, you look at Billy Gilmore and even Gallagher in the first game. You saw how lively they can be on the ball, calm, looking up for players, starting up attacks, creating runs, you know, and just looking comfortable in general, I think is a huge plus. Because as a midfielder, probably the strongest and, you know, difficult position to play in the middle of the park. You know, just being calm on the ball in general is a huge attribute you need to have to play in the central midfield area. And I still have my doubts on Bakayoko playing in central midfield. You know, hearing how good he did in Milan. You know, seeing Drinkwater, he was average. He was okay. He was decent in the first game. Second game, did he play? I forgot. But yeah, I think, you know, just in general, I think we could give a chance to Billy Gilmore, see what he can do this rest of the preseason. And if he can really show out and just continue this impressive run and just continue to show what he got, why not? You know, I'm not against that. But I'm not going to overhype them. I'm not going to force the issue. But if he deserves it, then why not? I don't see a problem.
One thing that sort of really struck out for me was you know, and as we've said, all due respect to the opposition, but the lack of intensity that was from Bakayoko, and he did play actually in the second half again against St. Patrick's, but a couple of missed passes and sort of lethargic movement. And this is once again tying back to the attitude of some of our youth players in the sense of Mount and Gilmore, and as you said, Gallagher. They were buzzing. They were just so interested to do well. So interested to just show what they can bring to the club, as opposed to someone like Bakayoko, who I felt at some times was probably a bit disinterested against weak oppositions. It was almost as if, what am I doing here? I'm too good to be, sort of like what am I being trialed here? Like, I'm not trialless B from Bohemians. So, and I hate that attitude. Like, there's rumors at the moment now with PSG linked with Bakayoko, and who knows, maybe that played a little bit of part in the second game against St. Patrick's, where he just seemed a bit disinterested. But this is what I'm saying. Well, not only we save money from buying players like Bakayoko and Drinkwater and whoever else, but the attitude as well is so important. Youth players who've started off in the academy just brings. They fight for the club. They know what the club is about. And they move on, and this is sort of a great segue into the next part, which is talking about understanding the culture of the club and understanding having now Frank Lampard, who's a legend of the club. These youth players are going to be buzzing even more, as opposed to bringing someone from the outside, which obviously we can't anyway, but let's just say we could. I always feel that when it's in-house and obviously someone with talent, they bring something extra in terms of attitude because they understand the club, they understand the fans, they understand the stadium, which at times trumps, bringing someone from outside. What's your thoughts on that, man?
I think with the culture wise, there's a lot of factors that come into play, especially with Frank Lampard coming back to Chelsea as manager. You look at over the last few years, there's been sort of a divide in Chelsea fans. So bringing back a club, a huge legend in Frank Lampard, probably one of the best midfielders in England over the last decade or so. Bringing back a huge figure like that would definitely help, based on our club, just calm the negativity down, because there has been negative aura over the last couple of years. There's been a kind of a decline in terms of success that Chelsea usually brought over the last decade. And with this hiring in Frank Lampard, I've been hearing fans on Twitter saying the reason they hired Frank Lampard was just to appease certain fans that were not in favor of Sarri. That's just ridiculous. That was not the only reason why. There's a lot of reasons that came into play why we did bring in Frank Lampard. For me personally, I don't think Frank is ready for the job, but he's here nonetheless. So we have to, make do of the situation. And what he can do, I think, is not only just appease the fans. That's one of the things he can do, is unite this fan base and get back that strong Stamford Bridge feeling that was there a decade ago. It was almost like a fortress. A Premier League comes into Stamford Bridge, and you always expect it, no matter the level of opposition, with the likes of Liverpool, the likes of Man U, you always expected Chelsea to always come on top because that's how strong we were at the time. And you look at the culture now, there's been doubts. You look at Chelsea and against a lower team, and there's doubts. There's doubt. No matter how strong your squad is, there's always this doubt that we cannot win. We have a lead, and there's still uncertainty of winning the game. But with all these legend and huge figures that weren't players in Chelsea, I think they can bring more in terms of, oh, they're coming back to the club, all these legends, but they're coming back in their respective roles. Each legend will have a respective role in terms of, being a first team coach, an academy coach, a figure, with the board, such as Peter Cech being an influencer with Marina and co. And I think, they can bring something that we lacked over the last recent years, which is something that, a huge voice in the locker room. You can make a sense for David Luiz, but I think bringing back the likes of Drogba, Lampard, Cech, all these figures that have knowledge, years of knowledge and wisdom they can share with our squad, that can just, just build this culture and fix it in a sense, because there's huge cracks. There's huge cracks in our fan base right now. So much negativity even right now. And I think, culture-wise, I think there's some positive that we need to look at this season, not just negatives, that I think will happen. I really believe so. I think we need to, not in a sense be a positive merchant or just be, completely blindly positive. There's a line, there's a boundary. We need to be real of the situation, not expect a lot from this season. But just in terms of culture, I think, this is a long answer. I apologize, but I think, yes, I think, it's not all doom and gloom. I think this culture that what we want to instill, bringing back Frank Lampard, it's not something that's going to be completely terrible. There's good times ahead, I think.
Absolutely, man. I agreed. And bringing these youth players, they'll understand that culture, and
Sure.
they won't feel alienated one bit, as opposed to, someone from the outside coming in could feel a bit strange, and could feel, a bit left out. But these kids, they understand it, and they'll fit in quite quickly. Now, moving on to the last part of this segment, which is sustainability. Having youth players, and looking at our club, and when Roman took us over, he's invested heavily towards the club, and it currently still sits in the negative. I think it's somewhere around close to 200 mil in negative since he first took over. We have been in surplus over the last 2 to 3 years in the financial year, but overall, since he took over, we're still negative in terms of the money he's invested. Now, having youth players allows for someone like Roman and for the club to be sustainable, that we don't have to go out there and splash money on mega stars. If we have the stars in-house, we try and support them. Yes, where we don't have the stars, let's say right now, for instance, we're probably the weakest at the moment in our striking position. If you look at our team, we probably have one of the strongest midfield areas, probably besides Man City and Liverpool. After that, I would say we are the number 3, alongside with Tottenham, perhaps, the strongest midfield, with the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Kovacic, Jorginho, Kante, Mason Mount, and so many more. So in terms of sustainability, if we have the talent, we don't need to keep buying, and hence someone like Roman hopefully can recoup some of his money back, and continue being our owner, and we don't have to sort of talk about Roman sell the club, or Roman's not he doesn't seem to have the ambition anymore. Basically, not get into the situation what Newcastle's in at the moment. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on youth players and allowing us to be sustainable, I suppose, down the track?
This is a very good topic to touch on. I think when you look at Chelsea, there hasn't been much sustainability over the last couple of years, especially manager wise. And even youth-wise, there's a stigma on Chelsea Academy, and it will always be a stigma until there's been more breakthroughs. Even you look at Christensen, you look at Ruben Loftus-Cheek, recently was broken through the first team and shown us that they truly deserve to play. There's always doubts on Christensen, but I think he's a good player. I think will only improve in time. And over the long term, you look at what you want from a club in order to be sustainable, in order to be successful. You need to have a proper backing, a good perspective on what you want to do future-wise, long-term-wise, in a sense, have a philosophy, have a structure, and just have a good support from the upstairs all the way down to the pitch. And if there's not that level of connection, chemistry, I think you cannot be successful. You look at the likes of Liverpool and what they have achieved over the last couple of years. There's always this banter. They haven't won the league, but over the last couple of years they have improved. So just over time they improved, and they have proper backing. They gave Klopp time. He's a great manager. He instilled a strong philosophy. I think they're probably the most strongest pressing teams in Europe, the way they organize it. And you look at what we have, over the last couple of years, it's just there's been question marks on what we can do long-term wise. There's always doubts. Even though there's like a new manager coming in 1 month later, you have doubts. There's always this huge cloud of uncertainty on managers. And I think in general, youth-wise, I think they have what it takes. Looking at the stigma, I think they're going to try to prove them wrong. They're going to try to prove the haters wrong, trying to prove that, we can make it in Chelsea, and we don't need to buy all these shiny gems that are on the market right now. Because, you look at our academy, and I think there's some players that do deserve an opportunity, such as, maybe Reece James, the likes of, the most obvious one, Callum Hudson-Odoi. And you look at what you want from a team, there needs to be a balance. In order to be sustainable, there needs to be a balance. Balance meaning you have a good squad, a good manager, a good backing. And that three, I think, comes into just being strong in general as a club, future-wise. And obviously, you still buy players. You look at our ban, we couldn't really improve using the market. I was really looking forward to, looking at wingers that really could have improved us. You just to bring some names, the likes of Nicolas Pepe or David Neres from Ajax, and all these players that even striker-wise, Jovic going to Real Madrid, we were looking at him. And all these players that we lack at the moment. You said yourself, striker-wise, we're not the strongest, probably the weakest there. And I think, even though there's a transfer ban, let's say we didn't have a transfer ban, in order to be sustainable, I think buying the right players such as, for example, filling the right voids. So right now, what do we really need? We can't just blindly buy players just for the sakes of it. We need to figure out what positions we truly lack right now. And if we can't fill that void using our academy or youth, and if we can use the market, okay. So we use the market to fill the right voids, find the right players that fit our system, whoever the manager is. Let's say we have an attacking-wise manager, right? We buy an attacking players that fit that position, that fit our style of play, and not just blindly buy players just for the sake of it. It doesn't work like that. You can give an example for City, but they're just buying players, and just bringing just a lot of quality to their team. That could work, but with our situation, that won't work because it just won't happen again. We're not that Chelsea. So there just needs to be a balance. In next year, once the ban is over and we can buy, we need to look at what happened this upcoming season and just fill the right voids. Fill what we need and not just blindly throw money at players that, really don't deserve to get paid. We need to invest smartly, intelligently, because we can't just keep adding dead weight to our squad. Good examples: Drinkwater, Zappacosta, Bakayoko, all these players that really just Chelsea quality. There's that prestige in Chelsea, and I think that in order to live up to it, you need to have a strong mentality, strong arsenal, and just in player wise. So I think in order to be sustainable, you need to just buy correctly, use our academy correctly, such as you just don't blindly give a youth player a chance. If they're really good enough, they'll earn it, like Ruben Loftus-Cheek did. So yes, in order to be sustainable, I think there needs to be a balance.
No, you're right, man. I've said it plenty of times that, now sort of circling back to, how we started the podcast. There's so many people in football Twitter and social media. I think I've sort of been guilty as well in previous times where, anytime we want to talk about youth, we want to put people down and we don't want to hear about it. But at the end of the day, we only want the talented ones to get a chance. It's not like we want every person that enters the youth academy get a chance. No, it's the talented ones. If they're good enough and they can prove themselves that they're good enough, let's fit them in and then assess the team wherever, as you said, the void is, and we don't have a talent in youth to fill that void. We go abroad, we go internationally, and we try and find a solution elsewhere. But it just doesn't make any sense if you have a star, let's say, centre back, or a star right back, or a star midfielder. Sure, there may not be the finished product at the moment, but you mix them with the experienced players that you already have, and you stay patient with them. As instead of doing that, you want to go to the market and buy a 60, 70, 80 million dollar player. And as you said, we don't have the firepower like City has. And on top of that, even though City has the firepower, they don't go out there and just splash money on one single player, 80 million, 90 million. They buy gems. They buy players that are actually not at the moment in a world-class status, but in a season or 2 seasons' time, they become world-class because they buy players that fit the system, that fit the philosophy, and that they know will work nicely with their manager. So, yeah, man, I mean, a lot needs to be sort of thought about in regards to youth players. We as fan base probably need to change our mentality, thinking that, we cannot be elite with youth players. Why not? Let's check it out. Maybe we can prove this, this particular concept wrong. That we need to splash money. You see PSG splashing money. What did they get out of splashing money? You see the likes of Barcelona, who has splashed money in recent times, and they still can't seem to win the Champions League. You see teams like Ajax reach the semi-finals of Champions League, and you see teams like Tottenham reach the finals of the Champions League, who've given themselves a self-imposed ban over the last two transfer windows. So it's not always about buying players. It's, as you said, it's about buying the right players, and also having a mixture of allowing youth talent and opportunity. So I guess before we finish up, Ray, what do you have to say to some of these football Twitter accounts that has a negative view towards youth players.
Yeah, I really wanted to touch on this for sure. You look at Twitter over the last couple of months. There's been a lot of high figures that have been, just in general backing and supporting our youth academy. In a sense, overhyping maybe, and on certain players. Just But I think I think some fans are just so caught up in this. You look at, from my perspective, I think they're looking at it in the sense that, oh, they're getting so overhyped. They're getting so much praise, so much support. And then when they look at them, let's say they only look at one game, and they're like, what is this? All this hype, all this praise that I've been seeing on Twitter. And then I look at one game, and they're like, oh, he's not good enough. And then they come to these conclusions that they're not good enough, they're not Chelsea quality yet, all these weak arguments that, I think in a sense come to a sense that I think there's just impatience in our fan base. I think, over the last couple of years, there's been a spoiledness to Chelsea fans, this winning culture. And now that, there's a sense of there's so much drama going on, they don't know how to handle it. So they just erupt chaos on Twitter. So, you look at, our youth academy and what certain, fans think of them. I see, people bashing players, bashing our own Chelsea academy. I don't see the reason why. I really don't. Maybe you're just joking around or something, but there's just no need for abuse. I made a tweet about this the other day. There's just no reason to abuse our own Chelsea player, no matter what you think of them, whether it's an academy, whether it's a first team player. I really don't want to see all this negativity on a Chelsea player. If you really are a Chelsea fan, I don't care what you think of this situation. Abusing someone that has the shirt in no sense is, okay. There's no justification in that. And I think right now in our fans, there's this impatience. I think that, there's this, I need to see you play week in and week out. And they see one bad game from our Chelsea academy, or they see a couple of a bad stretch of games, and they just have this certain view on a player, and they just be like, oh no, he's not good enough. No, he's not good enough. No matter what arguments or reasoning you bring to a debate, they're just so solely narrow-minded in a sense that, oh, they're stuck on that idea. They're stuck on that view. There's no perspective or openness to see that, oh, this player can, over time, like you said, a good point you said is that, there's no need to splash on the market when we have a good player that a couple of seasons away from being a top class player. Look at the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Over time, I think he can become, I really do believe, one of the strongest midfielders in the Premier League. There's still a couple of things he needs to improve on off the ball wise, defensive wise, and etc. But you look at some players right now that we have the potential, and you look at the market. There's always this, as I said earlier, this attraction in buying players and bringing the quality in. But when you look at the high quality that we have in our academy, I think we can properly mold them over time. Of course, they're not going to be just thrown into the fire and just give me results. No, there's steps into this. If you're going to integrate a youth player such as Ruben Loftus-Cheek or Callum Hudson-Odoi, they're going to improve every season. Work on their weaknesses. And there needs to be a balance in this, of course. You can't just blindly put a youngster in the first team and expect results. There needs to be whatever characteristics they bring to the table and just work from there. You look at the market, there's some players that, obviously outshine what we currently have, but there's no need to abuse them just because, oh, hey, they're not good enough, I'm going to abuse you on Twitter. There's no justification in that, not whatsoever. It's like, what's the point of it, right? Like, tell me, what's the point of abusing a player on Twitter just to prove someone wrong on Twitter? Is that your end game? Is that your goal? Okay, once you do that, what are you getting out of it? It's not you're going to be famous. It's not. That's the thing. I think people are so caught up in the frustration of Sarri being out, or in a sense, and just mad at the situation that what we currently have. But that's the reality of it. We need to look at what can go right and not just look at what happened, because we can't change the past now. It's happened now, right? So we need to look at what we can do to improve and not just look what could happen if things go wrong. I think people are so caught up in that direction that, oh, this could happen. This could go wrong. We can get relegated. We can end up 19th. We can end up getting trashed by Bournemouth again, 6-0 or 4-0, or get battered and park the bus. Just this strong view on Frank Lampard coming in, and that, and how his resume isn't as strong as other managers. There's no guarantee they would have come in and be a success. That's what people get caught up as well. They think bringing in someone as Ten Stegen or the likes of someone else, coming in as Chelsea manager, and there's no guarantee they would have been a success. You look at our history of managers, a huge list, might I say, and there's just been all these top quality coming in, and they just don't produce. So with Frank Lampard coming in, we all know he's young, second season of manager experience. Obviously, he has much to learn, but he's not going to come empty-handed. Now, you can make the argument on Jody Morris and et cetera and co., but he's not going to be alone in this matter. He's going to have, huge figures in the locker room to tell him, we can do this, we can do that. He can be flexible. So yes, I think in general, there's no reason to be, in a sense, so pessimistic of the situation. And I think we just need to look at our situation and what we can do to improve from there, and not just look at what could go wrong.
Oh, well said, man. Well said. So yeah, I suppose the final message from Ray and myself is, guys, just chill out in regards to youth players. Give them an opportunity, back them. There's no need to abuse them or put them down. It doesn't make you look great. As Ray has pointed out, what is your end game by showing, by demeaning these talent? At the end of the day, they're Chelsea players and they're trying to do their best. And if anything, they understand Chelsea better than any other players coming from the outside. So, yeah, Ray, thank you so much for joining us. It is our first episode back, and I do appreciate you giving up time. It is very early for you, I understand. Hopefully you can go back and have a nice sleep. And hope to catch you again, man, with other different topics. And hopefully, our fans in the 12th Man page can keep listening, and hopefully it's worthwhile for them as well. All right, guys. Well, have a great day. See ya.
Peace.